The following program is a presentation of the Options Insider Radio Network. For more programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio in iTunes. And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market. From unusual activity alerts to market updates and trading strategies. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block. With your host, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com and co-hosts Mike Tusaw from KnowYourOptionsInc.com and Mark Sebastian from OptionPit.com. The Option Block is brought to you by Options Express. Don't spend time worrying about your broker. At Options Express, security, stability, and account protection are the most important responsibilities to our customers. Secure account access, enhanced financial protection, entrusted with over $7 billion in customer assets, established financial stability. Options Express lets you trade with confidence. Stocks, options, and futures, all in one account. Trade with a specialist. Visit optionsexpress.com/OXradio to open your free account. Options Express is a member of FINRA, SIPC, and NFA.
All right, and welcome back to the Option Block, your bi-weekly source for options wit, wisdom, and once in a great while, hilarity. My name is Mark Longo from the OptionsInsider.com, as well as the Options Insider Radio Network. And I'm excited today because we have a new old comer, if that makes any sense, on the old all-star panel today. He's been on the show a few times before, but it has been a while. But we're happy to have him back on the show today. He's the man holding down the Options Express hot seat, none other than good old Alex Jacobson. Alex, welcome back to the program, sir.
Thank you, Mark. Excited to be on today.
And you know, the last time you were on, you teased your super secret project that was finally going to be unveiled shortly. And I think, dear listeners, that today we are going to receive that unveiling. So stay tuned to learn what Alex and the boys over at OX have been working on. That's so super duper top secret hush hush that we can finally find out what the super secret project is. So stay tuned for the Xpress Block where we learn more about that. How's that for a tease there, Alex?
That's exciting.
You even sound excited, and you're going to be giving us the information, so there we go. And, of course, we are also joined by the man from Maine, a.k.a. the Rock Lobster himself, good old Andrew Giovinazzi of OptionPit.com. Mr. Giovinazzi, how are the waves and the lobsters treating you these days?
Pretty darn good. Weather's nice. The lobsters are tasty. Cheap, though. Lobstermen are still complaining, but overall, life is pretty good.
Life is good over in the pit, huh? Well, good to hear it. I'm glad that the lobsters are treating you well up in the mini Kuwait, a.k.a. Maine, where everything is powered on lobster oil, and everyone is essentially a lobster baron in disguise.
Exactly. I like that lobster oil. Yes, we are. I just want to power everything on lobster shells.
There we go. That's the next step. Get past the oil and get into the shell itself. Crustacean powered.
Just get into the shell business. I think we could do something there.
All right, and with that, we're going to dive right into the trading block.
The trading block.
All right, and it was another weird one on the street. I know we've been saying that a lot lately. It's kind of a popular refrain, but it was yet indeed another weird one. Most of the major indices were up pretty strong for most of the session. And they closed off their highs of the day with the S&P up about 0.2% to about 1394. The Dow up about 0.2% as well to 13,117. And then Nasdaq up nearly 0.8% to 2989. And the good old VIX cash moving in lockstep with the market yet again, up about 2% on the day to 15.97. Why don't we start there then, Andrew, as we are wont to do? VIX cash, not exactly the ideal portfolio hedge of late. Would you agree?
Well, this is of course why we go through it on a daily basis.
Yes, exactly.
At Option Pit, because it works. You just have to know whence it works. Volatility actually in the SPX was down today. I know, why is the VIX up? Well, because the VIX keeps going up, compressing those at-the-money values for volatility. But if you notice, the VXX and the futures were down on the day. So there's a little, and plus the weekend got pumped back in, guys.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. It seems to me like every week these market makers just crush the hell out of it going into the weekend, and then on Monday morning they all collectively wake up and say, wait a minute, what the hell did we do? There's still risk in the world, and so they put it all back in. I don't understand why we go through this exercise every week.
It is, but it nonetheless is the market that we love. And so right now, as it looks, actually the VIX, I think, only put a small part. There's actually some leakage. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's trading 15.5 or lower tomorrow without any trouble at all.
No, that wouldn't surprise me as well, given all the bizarre developments we've seen out in VIX land lately. This is also why, we've hit it on it many times in the show in the past, worth hitting on again, when I always kind of cringe whenever I see a lot of basic to intermediate retail just flocking into VIX, and a lot of them using it as a quote-unquote portfolio hedge because they really don't understand the nuances contained therein. And days like we've seen today and over the past week, it really takes an experienced hand to filter out what's really going on with VIX. And if you just want it as your quote-unquote portfolio hedge, it really kind of belying all the other things that are going on with this product. It really isn't well suited to that. It really needs a little bit more of an experienced hand on the tiller to get the most out of it. So
most buck out of the bang, or the most bang out of the buck, for sure.
I'm sure you guys have the same conversation with all of your kind of beginning or intermediate mentorees, where the people want to flock into VIX, and you kind of have to hold their hand a little bit and say, wait a minute, here's this, here's that, here's how this thing actually performs, right. Here's some ways you might actually want to use it.
Right. We teach it in our intermediate course once we've gone through all the Greeks and volatility work first. Because we want people to have a non-directional, we want a non-directional volatility hedge, the ability to use one well. So that's when we teach it about Course 10 in our Gold course. Mark does a great job on it. It's a variant of some of the stuff he does. We get a little deeper, though, because we have our students at our clutches. But I think if you want to trade options, you should understand how it works to a pretty good degree. And I mean, once you understand sort of the basic strangeness of it, it is fair. I'm not going to say it's predictable, but it can act in a predictable way. You just have to understand the, some of the little mathematical gobbledygook that goes on to create the cash, the future products, the ETNs, and just basically the layers that the product is. It's on top of insurance, on top of insurance.
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting. I think VIX kind of basks in this reflected glow these days as this portfolio hedge, and I'm seeing actually that being reiterated a bit over the past few months, and surprisingly so. But a lot of this has to do, I think, with the reflected glow from the fact that VIX options in particular so dramatically outperform on those crazy, cliche black swan days when the market hits the fan, and the VIX, as compared to a straight up S&P put or S&P put spread, performs dramatically better because it just has that complete explosion to the upside that we know VIX is very much prone to in those environments. So upside VIX calls or VIX verticals tend to outperform in those scenarios. But the rest of the time, the intraday, regular day sessions, 9 times out of 10, the S&P put spread is going to be a much more cost-effective and much more direct way to hedge your portfolio risk. But because the VIX call spreads or VIX verticals or VIX calendars, however you construct it, have those moments of just extreme upside once in a great while, that tends to somewhat level the playing field in a lot of people's eyes, or even put VIX calls and call spreads and VIX calendars over the top for a lot of them, when in reality, I think day to day, 9 times out of 10, you're going to get more bang from your buck by having the more direct hedge. But because VIX has those crazy days in those crazy down markets, that VIX still has this bit of a reputation as you could use it for that purpose, when really I don't think it really is an ideal instrument for that sort of usage. Unless you want to spec on those crazy black swan days, then by all means, VIX is your go-to baby.
It does. And there are, like, actually right now, the options in the VIX are starting to get cheap again. Let's see if they set a new low for the year, which they could. Every time we get down to these low levels, it always gets, it gets a little bit funky. Because really, to have it drive down to a lower level is tough. But we're just at that point right now where we could start seeing some, if there's no more bad news, right, and we have no good reason to go a whole bunch higher, where does the volatility go? Do you see 12% at the money vol again in the indexes? And you sure could, right? And then the VIX is going to go to 14.
Andrew, what's the lowest you've seen in your lifetime, in your trading history?
9.
The day before the 87 crash, it was 8.
I know.
Seven and change.
Now, Alex, you were at the SIBO back in the day, and at the Options Institute really back in the day, which is an affiliate or an arm of the SIBO. But you were kind of there really pre-VIX explosion, but I'd imagine there still was a lot of VIX education that was involved in your day-to-day job.
I was actually there for VIX, the first version of VIX, when Whaley came out with it. And to your point, I think it's a challenging product to understand, but at extremes, I think it's the ideal hedge. But it's tough for the retail investor on a day-to-day basis. And when we brought it out for the first, 8 or 10 years that we quoted the VIX, nobody wanted to trade it. Everybody was afraid to trade it. And I remember sitting in a meeting at the SIBO where the biggest SPX shop, which was Hull Trading, we sat there with Blair Hull. And this is in the late 80s and early 90s, if I recall. And I do this every call. I demonstrate my age, where the product committee guys said we want to list an option on it, and the market maker said, no way. We just simply can't hedge the VIX. And then, of course, you'd make the theoretical argument that you hedge it with the straddle. And I remember the objection. I don't remember if it was Blair or if it was Stafford, but it was kind of one of what I'll call the legendary market makers who said, I do not want to be the market maker in it. And again, back then levels were 7, 8, 9, 10. October 87 it gets to 150. But even that was a simulated number. It was probably closer to 300 in 87. But what they basically said is, look, when it's 7 or 8, I'm not going to want to sell it to anybody. Don't even talk to me about how I might be able to hedge it. I simply don't want to be there in that kind of environment, because everybody's going to be a vol buyer. And the kind of brilliant thing the SIBO did when they reconfigured it is to create a futures contract on it, because that's what gave the market makers some ability to hedge. But back to your point, and I think the real distinction between what I'll call a really good option trader and just an ordinary option trader. An ordinary option trader, in my eyes, kind of makes a decision based on an expectation of trend and an expectation of time. And the real distinguishing factor that makes a great trader, whether the retail institutional hedge fund, is they have an opinion about volatility. And the classic objection when you talk to retail investors or high net worth investors is that classic objection about I bought an option or I sold an option and this happened and it didn't perform the way I expected. I mean, the one that used to come up in retail all the time was, stock gets hammered, just gets hammered, which to those of us that are industry professionals means it goes down and the vol goes up. And, I buy an out-of-the-money call because I think the market overreacted. Next couple of days, the stock goes up and the call goes down. And the customer looks at you and says, market makers are all felons. There's no way the stock could have gone up and the call didn't go up. And you'd explain the impact of volatility and the fact that given their view, that customer had bought the wrong option. And in many instances, they shouldn't have traded anything if they didn't understand the impact of volatility. But I think it's incumbent on a investor, no matter they're retail or institutional, they're going to be active in the options market. They should have a view of volatility. And the fact that the CBOE created this visible, transparent benchmark of the VIX and the other benchmarks they've created in options, I think is an outstanding opportunity for investors to learn those and to understand what they mean. And before you enter into a trade, whether it's a trade in the VIX or whether it's a trade in the SPX or whether it's a trade in Google or Apple, is have what I always call the Goldilocks view of volatility. Is it too high? Is it too low? Or is it just right? And we can be wrong, but it's a great idea to have a view of volatility because it gives you a better handle on how the option market performs.
Alex, I'm not familiar with this example you cite of the market rallying and the call going down. I've never received that question before. So explain to me how this one works.
Yeah.
I think if we just had one question we could perennially post to the top of the options insider. Maybe that should be in our masthead somewhere. I think that would be it, or some form thereof of that question, because it's amazing how often it continues to come in, even at this late hour in the game. But,
well, I think that's the key, is understanding that options aren't little stocks. And again, going back a long time ago to the early days of option trading, the people who really were the most successful, and my definition of most successful is they made or lost money by design, not by accident, were the people who understood volatility. And again, Andrew will kind of back me up on this. You're not always right. You're not always going to be right. But kind of the first rule for the short-term trader, and short-term is anybody who gets out before expiration. It could be 1 week, 1 month, it could be 1 year. But if you're right about trend but wrong about vol, your trade's going to underperform. If you're wrong about trend but right about vol, your trade's going to outperform. And I think that's important.
It is. And it's before we go off onto even more of it, even though we love talking about VIX, we talk about it all the time here on the show, there are a couple other things going on in the old market today. Andrew, I hate to keep bringing it up, but your favorite name is always in the headlines these days, and good old Zynga. It actually is a twofer for us because it also ties in with Electronic Arts, EA, a name I was talking about last week on the show. And they had earnings last week and since have rallied substantially off the news that they're suing Zynga for stealing their online Sims game on Facebook. So
maybe they can get the rest of Zynga's cash.
Yeah, I think that's it. That's interesting when we brought up a lot of potential threats and things that these companies like Zynga face in the future. But one thing I didn't really think about at the time, but is totally a serious threat for a lot of these online gaming firms like the Facebook ones and the iPad ones, is essentially most of the most successful ones like the Zyngas and the Gamelofts have made their names by just aping existing IPs like Scrabble or The Sims in this case, or World of Warcraft. And what do you do suddenly when the original IP holders start breathing down your neck? That might be an interesting... so Zynga is discovering that now. Maybe they'll take the last of the $3 that is left in whatever it's. I think Zynga today closed. I think they actually were up today. So apparently the news of the
22 cents.
Yeah, the news of the lawsuit, a boon to Zynga apparently.
Almost 10%.
Yeah, up nearly 10% to $2.94. EA also rallying today, up about $1 something over the past few sessions, up to about $12.20 today. Speaking of the gaming sector, I know this is another one that you're a fan of these days. Another sub $5 stock, of course, perhaps not right now after the earnings came out, is THQ. I know you're watching this one for for a while. They had earnings came out today after the bell. They closed a little bit south of the 5 handle, $4.91, trading about $5 at 6 in the after hours. So apparently THQ has a wee bit of life left in them after all. Of course, given what we saw with the Amazon post after hours earnings, what was it, about a week ago on the show, and then how they were completely wrong and the stock opened up about 15 handles the next day after selling off aggressively in the after hours. We've learned the value of watching the after hours activity, but still there is some interesting trading going on. Of course, we had the whatever you want to call it, mini crash, hiccup, whatever you want to call it, night last week. We touched on it on last week's show, so we don't have to get into it too much, except for the fact that Knight Capital has been on quite the run. Knight Capital, ticker symbol KCG, and they've been off to the races of late, just all over the place, and they had another bump today until they sold off again. It's been quite the roller coaster ride, as most of their customers, like TD Ameritrade, who said previously last week, yeah, we're not going to do business with these guys anymore, which is kind of the kiss of death for a specialist firm like that, now come in with the white knight, white hat kind of deal to buy them out. Kind of interesting when a customer puts it out there that they're not going to trade with you anymore, really hammering your stock, and then they pick you up at a bargain price. Yeah, that's with customers like that. I don't know if you need too many other enemies, but it's interesting enough to see how all of that works. It's very nice of them to with one hand smash the stock, and the other hand, we'll scoop it up now. We'll be the white knight in all of this. So I know John was talking last week on the show about, actually I think it was Sean, about the different lengths that OX had to do to route around the Knight fiasco, and now a lot of these end customers like TD and a bunch of others are getting together to buy a significant portion of what's left of KCG. Too bad John's not on today because oil's up today. I know he likes to talk about oil. And of course, Bernanke said that economists don't have a clue about what individuals actually want or know or their well-being levels, which I don't know if we took the Fed chairman to tell us all that economists don't have a clue. I think we here on this show hold economists in about the same regard as analysts. They're really two sides of the same very, very dismal coin. Bernanke coming out after his own profession, I thought that was a little bit fun. Not really an option story, but still a fun one to discuss. But now, since we've been running on quite a bit here in the trading block, we're going to close it up and dive right into the odd block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by theoptionsinsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
All right, that funky tune means it's time once again for the old odd block. We're going to dive into a couple interesting ones. I think we'll kick off with one that is actually reporting as we speak. So that's kind of fun. We could see if all these traders were on the right end of the right side of the coin or not. We're going to start off with Tumi Holdings, ticker symbol TUMI. And this is a retailer of high-end luggage, briefcases, and bags. So, Andrew, it's right up your alley. I know you love your very nice high-end handbags.
Yeah, well, it's funny. My grandmother used to sell these in a luggage goods store when I was a kid. I remember going in to visit her. Yep, Tumi bags. There you go. That's my story.
That's your Tumi story for the day.
They're very rugged bags.
Oh. Well, it looks like stylish and rugged. There you go. That's your endorsement. That'll be on the tag. The option block. They're stylish and rugged. Tumi bags. But yes, what we saw today is Tumi having a nice upside day today, moving up about 3% to close at $18.51 today, ahead of their earnings, which are after the bell and being released as we speak, as we record this. This is quite a strong up move here on Tumi. And despite this, what we saw was a lot of people flocking into the stock today, betting that this move is no flash in the pan. It's going to continue through earnings and indeed into the end of expiration here, because we saw a lot of call buyers, a lot of upside call buyers flocking into Tumi today, in particular the AUG 20s, where we saw before we even get into the numbers, this is a name that does usually a whopping 87 contracts a day. So even 100 lot is size volume here in Tumi. And what we saw was over 4,000 contracts going up today in Tumi, the bulk of that being about 3,800 of the AUG 20 calls going up today against a previous open interest of just 136 contracts. This is all new, all opening paper. The bulk of these calls were purchased for around 63 cents. And so this guy's looking for a significant pop of about 13% to the upside for Tumi for these calls to break even. So far, so good. These calls went out buck at $1.05 here going into the announcement. And we're seeing Tumi in the after hours reporting they closed, like I said, around 18.5, trading about 19.10 at 20. So a bit wide there, but looks like it's going to be moving to the upside. It may not be enough, unless this thing really takes a pop. It may not be enough for all that juice to pay off, but we'll see if this trader might have a few minutes on the open tomorrow. Even if this stock opens around 19.5, like it looks like it might tomorrow, that he might have a few minutes on the open where the vol is still pumped to he can maybe get out of these calls for a scratch or maybe even a little bit of money. But we'll see. Interesting positioning here in Tumi. A lot of recent names like Coach and others have been crushed after missing their recent earnings, which makes this guy positioning so aggressively in Tumi even more interesting given the fates of all of their competitors of late. Of course, the name down about 37% since their IPO back in the end of April, where they IPO'd, got up to about nearly $30, 29, about 28.70. So far the year not exactly turning out to be a stellar one for Tumi here. This guy obviously betting that the near term is going to be a bullish one here for Tumi. And of course, as Andrew says, stylish and rugged. So if you're looking for a handbag gentleman in our audience, by all means, Tumi, the place to go. Are they big up there in Maine, Andrew?
Oh, I don't think they use anything but duffel bags in Maine.
Yes, that's true. And lobster
bags.
Like
$500 duffel.
Because is a fancy handbag really the appropriate vessel to put a freshly caught lobster? I don't think so.
Yeah, although the Tumi handbags are tough. They could hold a lobster, but I don't know if that's the right it's the right way to hold it.
If this options thing doesn't work out for you, I think you have a future as a handbag pitchman. I think this might be I could see you late night infomercial pitching these rugged yet attractive and handsome handbags to an assortment of men and ladies.
As a spokesmodel, as it were.
Yes. All right, we'll finish up here on the old odd block with a weird one, and we love the weird ones here on OB because this one is just all over the place. You can call it what you like, and we'll get into some of the possible definitions of what this guy's up to here. This is an odd block special, as you like to say, and one of these $2 names we like to talk about. And when they get down to this range, it opens up a lot of funky possibilities from an options perspective. We're talking about Chimera Investment Corporation, ticker symbol CIM. All right, so here we go with Chimera. And actually, there has been a change. Initially, when our analyst first wrote this up this morning, it was 45,000 contracts going up in Chimera, 15,000 lots across the board. They seem to have busted half of them on two of those strikes, or at least cancel, replace them, or whatever they did with that volume. And it seems to make a little bit more sense now as what the heck is going on out in Chimera. Like I said, this is a $2 name, trading $2.18, and we saw just a ton of volume coming in. Starting off with what was 15,000 has now been amended to half that. 7,500 of the DS2 calls being purchased for about 30 cents this morning. We also saw 15,000 of the December 2 puts. Looks like they were sold for about 11 cents on that trade. So then, of course, you're legging into conversions and reversals here because there was a ton of stock that went up there was 15 million shares. Let me see if that's been adjusted as well. 19 million shares on the day. So it looks like he did all this tied to stock. And then, so he essentially is legging into a combo at this point. And then, of course, he added the upside kicker, which makes it even more interesting. Too bad Tusaw isn't here because he loves his call stupids. And he did 7,500. He spread out the call side of this combo. So it's actually a bit of a ratio combo, I suppose you can call it, or not even a combo. It's a partial combo, partial vertical call stupid. He picked up 7,500 of the D's 2 halves for about 10 cents. All of this looks like it was pretty much done tied to stock. So it looks like you could say he did a call stupid and he financed it with the puts and did it tied to stock. You can look at this a lot of different ways. He did a ratio bullish risk reversal. He did a lot of a combo, like I said, tied to stock. There's a lot of different interpretations of this one. Andrew, if you had a chance to kick this one around, it's even weirder now that they've slashed the volume in half. I should also point out that he put up 6,000 of the SEP2 calls as well. I don't have prices on those right now. I can pull that up really quickly. But a weird one. One of the ones we like to highlight here on the odd block because it certainly leaves you scratching your head. Looks like he bought about 5,000 of these SEP2 calls for 30 cents. Of course, and this is on splits, so it's hard to tell what the heck this guy was actually doing. Looks like he bought them, though. But, yeah, a lot of weird paper going up. Did you have a chance to look at this one at all, Andrew?
Yeah, I saw this. I saw the volume come across today. It was a $2.50 stock. I didn't think much about it. It's like one of these really these kind of. It looks like one of the financial crisis holdover stocks. They buy our mortgage-backed securities and stuff like that. And it looks like it's still solvent. So for $2, somebody's taking just a December flyer for nothing. I
should point out, it looks like it says here that the earnings are today, the 6th. So I don't see any movement in the stock unless they.
Supposedly the company has book value. So I don't know if they're just stuck forever and they're never going to go anywhere. But clearly, somebody, either they looked at all the numbers just on, and said, "Oh wow, this company has $3 worth of book value and it's trading for $2." I mean, it could be the case, but it's. I just don't think options get a whole lot cheaper. 30 volatility, and back to Alex's point here. 30 volatility in a $2.50 stock. Not a lot of risk there.
Yeah, and it looks like on the surface this guy's positioning for a pop, but then again, if he did it tied to stock, it could be exactly the opposite there. And
or he might be closing the stock out, taking a loss, and now he's long some
that could be too, because there's not much room on the upside here. Even though this thing does pop, it really was only recently trading about $2.80, maybe $3 if you're charitable over the past year. So this guy's not exactly positioning for a lightning move to 10 or anything like that.
Now, I'm trying to think, is this something more like a NALI, like an NLY, an Annaly Capital Group? Because they do pay a dividend. They've been paying an 11.9-cent dividend. They've actually paid 50 cents in dividends over the last. So it's one of those things where, what's exactly the deal? So I think the guy, potentially needed to keep the stock to collect the divvies. So it's some kind of funky play on this.
Yeah, it's almost like a thought exercise in many ways, which is why we wanted to bring it up here on the old odd block. Let our listeners dig into this one a little bit and do a little bit of their own analysis. Because
putting the conversion, I couldn't see.
Yeah, I couldn't see the print on the stock.
If you put the reversal on, because I'm looking at the reversal for a nickel over, there is the D's 2 combination is 15 cents underwater. So it looks like there's going to be a markdown in the dividend. The market right now in December is saying, okay, we're not going to collect. The market's expecting probably 2 divvies by December. There should be a SEP and a D's divvy that they're expecting for around 25 cents. So it's possible they're not going to pay it. That's how I would look at that.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was leaning to, especially when it was lit up this morning as being 15,000 across the board. It looked like he was really locking in an unfavorable level with that conversion reversal. And now he's done it on a ratio, so it makes a little bit more sense, but it's also a little bit more opaque as to exactly what he was up to here.
Right, and maybe he wants to call kicker in case they
really surprise to the upside.
Yeah, well, this is a pretty big trade for a dividend. Once and always in these dividend trades, because I've seen some really horrific ones go up. It's generally one guy really knows what's going on and the other guy doesn't.
Yeah, my favorite of these div ones are the guys who come in and they play. This is not a typical dividend stock where they're just swapping and doing wash trades on 100 delta calls. But my favorite dividend ones are always where the guys come in and really play these ATM strikes and they try to do wash trades on 60 delta calls, and there's a little bit of risk involved in that, whereas this is
just a bit.
Just a bit. But yeah, this is an interesting one. That's why I wanted to bring it up here on the Odd Block. We could spend the whole episode really parsing this one, but I wanted to let our listeners know about it so they can look at it themselves and do a little bit of their homework. Maybe this is a good homework assignment for your mentees, Andrew, so they can kind of parse and see what they think this trader is up to here, because this is a fun one.
Yeah, they have a steadily declining dividend flow, so maybe this guy's saying, you know what, these guys are going to be done paying dividends pretty soon. And
you can never trust a name that has the head of a lion and the tail of a snake and the wings of an eagle from a financial perspective. That's just dubious across the board. That was a joke for our Greek mythology fans out there.
That could have been Peregrine.
Yeah, you're right.
Financial group. We're going to smile at you with one face and hose you with the other face.
Yes, and steal all your money with the other. Pay no attention to what the snake tail is doing. All right. And with that interesting thought question for our listeners, that little problem for you, a little bit of homework, we're going to close out the old Odd Block, and now we're going to dive right into Alex's secret project, a.k.a. the Xpress Block.
The Xpress Block, brought to you by Options Xpress. Options Xpress lets you trade where and when you want for every level of trading. From advanced charting, free daily trading ideas, and free educational resources, Options Xpress is the online broker for all traders. Best of all, Options Xpress allows you to trade stocks, options, and futures all in a single account on powerful yet easy-to-use trading platforms, including mobile devices. Visit optionsexpress.com/OXradio for your free account. Options Express is a member of FINRA, SIPC, and NFA.
All right, and now, listeners, this is the moment you've all been waiting for, the moment when Alex reveals what he and his team over at OX have been working on in their super top secret labs there in the bunker of OX HQ. And Alex, I don't know if you know this, but I'm pretty famous for my birdie network, where they go out there and spy for me on the various goings on in the world of options. And I've had my birdies circling OX for a while, trying to figure out exactly what it is you and your gang have been working on over there. And they happened to whisper to me something the other day. It's something to do with ideas. Is that correct? Can you give me an inkling if my birdies have they merited their bird seed for this week?
Yes, they have, and I will now, from this point forward, bring my shotgun down to knock some of those birds out of the sky, now that I know that that's you. But essentially what I was brought into the firm to do was build something that is, in fact, called the Ideas Hub. And we essentially are rolling out the first 4 portions of the Ideas Hub. And what we wanted to do was take kind of my experience in the institutional hedge fund and high net worth community and see if we could essentially automate some of what was commonly done in the community and offer that out to OX customers. So the first part is actually out and rolling out to the customer network. But what Ideas Hub has, and as I say, we're only rolling out the first 4 areas, it's an investor marketplace that looks at 4 key areas. What's hot in the market, it looks at earnings, it looks at the earnings calendar for the top 15 by volume companies in the next week. It looks at a quantitative covered call screener, and it looks at an area that I'll delve into a bit because I know there's some time to go into all of this. That's simply called premium harvesting. And I'll focus on premium harvesting really quick, but what we did essentially is we built what is, as far as I know, the industry, the retail investor industry's first credit put spread, credit call spread, iron condor finder. And what makes it so cool, talking about volatility as we were earlier, is I took the 16 instruments that the CBOE calculates the volatility index on. Now, we talked about the VIX, which is the volatility of the S&P 500, also the volatility of the SPDR and the SPX PM. CBOE calculates an implied volatility benchmark for all the major index products, the SPX, the NASDAQ, and the Russell, and all the derivatives of those, which are, the Russell ETF and the Qs and It also does it on a handful of stocks, and I always forget a name, but they do it on Apple, Amazon, Google, Goldman Sachs, and IBM, and I'm generally leaving one out. And they do it on the most active ETFs, things like the XLE and the XLF. So what we did is we took that vol benchmark, and what we essentially did is we created a credit put spread, credit call spread, iron condor finder that, just to give you a quick example, if you're looking at an Apple computer, what Ideas Hub does is it'll put up a weekly, monthly, 60-day, and in the indexes that trade quarterlies, it'll put up the credit put spread, credit call spread, and the condor, one standard deviation out of the money. And we get that one standard deviation out of the money by the SIBO benchmarks. So that essentially an investor in the morning could come look at this and say, look, I'm a premium seller, I want to be quantitative, and I want to position myself 1 sigma out. Some people want to go 2 sigmas out. Some people, might want to go less out. But what the hub does, it puts the idea up. So hypothetically, if it were a $100 stock, you could come to it and you'd see a credit put spread, credit call spread, and the condor, the marrying of the two spreads. 1 sigma out, you'd see the credit for it. You'd see the return on risk, which again is not something that's used that commonly in the individual investor community. Return on risk in the hedge fund community used to basically say, look, if I sell a $10 spread for $1, my return on risk is 1/10 or 10%. And we began rolling it out. We began showing it to customers. We were in Southfield, Michigan last week. We were in Raleigh, North Carolina. This last weekend we'll be in Boston. But we're rolling it out. It's a marketplace of just simply what it sounds like. It's ideas. And as far as I know, I think it's the retail communities, the individual investor community's first iron condor finder. And folks who have Option Xpress accounts and shortly folks who have Schwab accounts will be able to access it. Doesn't cost anything. It automatically formats into the Options Xpress all-in-one trade ticket, puts up the payoff diagram, puts up the probability chart, and people who we've shown it to, and I have a little bias in this, have absolutely loved it.
I'm looking at it right now, Alex, while you were talking. I brought it up. And if you are an OX customer, it's pretty easy to find. Just go to the website, log into your account, and you'll see a little banner there right at the top saying Idea Hub. At least that's what I saw on my page. Click on it, and it kicks you into this page that is just full of crazy ideas. I clicked on not crazy, but a significant number of ideas. And I clicked on the premium harvesting section here, Alex. I'm looking here at the Apple. It's got the 555, 565, 685, 695 iron condor that it's recommending here in September, and talking about a 16.4% return on risk. If you click on that here, which I just had up and is opening now, it shows you all of the P&L graph. It shows you all the different disparate elements of that trade and how they're priced up. And what's even, I think, interesting, I know for you guys as a broker, but also for the customer here, it hit a trade button, and I haven't done that yet. Let me click that now and see what happens. I'm assuming that pre-populates my trade ticket for me and does most of the heavy lifting for
exactly.
you, which is fantastic.
And it gives you NBBO. It gives you where we have a third-party liquidity provider. It'll give you the inside market. There are some filters in there. One question that comes up a lot, is there any sort of fundamental analysis in this? And no, it's all quantitative. So it's all essentially, and I have to be careful when I use this term because people don't like this term anymore, an algorithm. And it throws out any spread that's trading for a quarter or less, because we don't want to drive an investor to a spread that's trading for a quarter or less, but it's really cool. And, talking to my friends in the industry and having been around for a long time, I think this is the first of its kind in the individual investor community. And as I say, we've only built out the first floor. We built out the covered right, the earnings, what's hot, which is driven by one of the Dragon, our internal tool. But the premium harvesting is a standalone. And you say the great thing is this great resource that the SIBO has created that's given us volatility numbers on these instruments. And there are lots of customers who are premium harvesters. In fact, traditionally in the option community, the number that's kind of bantied around is about half the volume in the individual investor community are people who are coming there to harvest premium. They're looking for a market-neutral strategy, and it can be anything from simply selling premium to covered call writing to the iron condor to spreads, and we are very excited about it.
Yeah, listeners, like I said, I'm playing around with it as we're speaking, and there's a number of different tabs within here. There's the big movers, there's earnings, there's a bunch of different stuff. I'm clicking on the big movers now, and of course it's showing me all the hot names that are really dramatically moving today, and also their changes in open interest and some trades that you could do to take advantage of that. So from an idea generation perspective, this is certainly ideal. I know most brokers these days are really looking for ways to help their customers and their clients on that end, on the idea generation end. So the fact that you can log into this idea hub now and really just have this at your fingertips with all these various metrics is pretty impressive. I could certainly see down the road as this idea hub expands, incorporating a lot of this into the show here and saying, hey, what's hot in the idea hub today? What's the big, we can pull some of this data in for the odd block when we're talking about different unusual activity stocks, what the idea hub is saying about those and what some of the interesting trades are and what the clients are actually doing in there. So there's a lot of interesting stuff, I think, from my own selfish perspective here for the show that is very interesting, as well as for the end user here, the client, who has a lot of great trades just laid out at his fingertips, pre-populated, analyzed, and ready to go.
Yeah, people we've shown it to, as I say, we've only showed it to a couple of groups, and we're rolling out in accounts now. And I'm an options person, so one thing I learned in the last year plus working here was how to work with the product development people and the technology people and the design people for the look and feel. But what this is eventually going to be is everything from the big movers, which really just looks at money flows and changes in open interest. So right now, the premium harvesting, but in the next many months, we're going to be bringing calendars into this. We're going to be bringing a futures product into this. We're going to be bringing a diagonal product into this, weekly options, spread against leaps and things like that. And it creates for that individual investor a place to come and get ideas, and if there isn't an idea there that's something that they're comfortable with, it's certainly a starting point for them to do their own research and kind of move forward from there.
And it certainly just goes to show, too, how much people love those upside calls and all of these high-moving names, because I'm looking at the big movers, and it's showing 500% interest in this near-term upside call and 300% increase in open interest in this strike. So people love flocking into that upside, as we talk about on the show quite a bit. So listeners, by all means, if you're an OX customer, by all means, log in at the website and check this out for yourself. We can't really do it justice in a 5 or 10 minute synopsis here on the show, but play around with it yourself. It's certainly, I think, something that's interesting, and if you're looking for some great idea generation tools, this will certainly get you started on the right path. So thank you for that, Alex. I'm glad we could finally learn about what the super secret, top secret project was, and I'm looking forward to seeing what new developments and tweaks you guys have on this coming out of the super secret OX labs in the very near future.
Yeah, there's more cool stuff coming, and I don't mean to be a tease, but we'll start to do webinars on this probably this week and showing it to people. But the reaction, say I was in Raleigh, North Carolina this weekend, and we've kind of chosen to show it in the early stages, kind of off Broadway. Next week we'll be in Boston demoing it out to customers, and customer reaction has been, why didn't it exist before? The biggest thing that customers have said is, if it's not in my account, how soon will I get it? So we're very excited about it. I'm obviously excited about it because I spent the last year working on it, and it's really cool.
Yeah, it looks pretty fascinating. I'm looking forward to digging into it some more myself and getting into it more on future shows. But that's it for the Xpress Block for now. Now we're going to dive right into, because we have been going for a while, an abbreviated Around the Block.
Around the Block.
All right, and welcome to Around the Block. And there's a couple of interesting things going on, or not tomorrow, but in the coming sessions. We have Disney earnings coming out tomorrow, ticker symbol DIS, of course. So that's a big name to watch. A lot of our listeners like trading on that one. It's been an interesting premium selling name of late because it has been relatively stagnant for the most part. And, of course, Nvidia coming out on the 9th later on this week. Andrew, since you have to run to catch your lobsters in a few minutes, what are you watching for Around the Block here?
Around the block, we're keeping an eye on night, watching to see if the vol can make new lows for the year. Always watching the euro, because it looks like it's on the comeback train to some degree, not plumb the lows anymore. So just, and there's a few scatter earnings. Cisco's looking kind of interesting for some reason. It's had such a big move recently. I don't love it or hate the stock, but it's starting to look like the stock could move again potentially. I mean, just based on some recent movement in it. So, just simple stuff like that. Nothing real fancy right now, just because there's not really great stuff to do. Kind of as we hang out here at around 1390 or so on the 1388 on the E-mini. So, just kind of hanging out and watching how things develop.
Andrew, any of you on Priceline? Priceline has earnings. Ironically, I think Knight has earnings on Wednesday, but I don't think those are going to be a surprise.
They're not going to be. We lost $400 million.
yeah. Priceline, I think, has earnings on Wednesday. Do you have any take on that?
I started looking at one of the Priceline Iron Condors like 2 weeks ago. Let me see where it is now. So, it's like one of those things, if there's an interesting trade in it. Let's see here. Yeah, it hasn't moved much. It's moved 10 cents in about 9 days. So there's been zero decay on the 680 Iron Butterfly going into earnings. So it's kind of just sitting right there.
I lost all interest in Priceline after they killed off the William Shatner character in their commercials there. So who could ever buy premium or sell premium in this name again? It's too heartbreaking.
Yeah, I know. Actually, the rally in this thing was like $70 or $80? It was pretty impressive.
Yeah, this thing's been on an impressive run, certainly since January when it was trading the high 400s, like 475, 480. Certainly had quite the run over the first half of this year anyway. All right, so that is going to do it for the Around the Block segment. That's also going to do it for this episode of the Option Block. But before we go, Andrew, tell our listeners what is coming up in the land of the pit.
Land of the Pit, it's Wednesday. Taking advantage of the run on commodities using equity options. We got a couple of little alternative plays for this corn trading at, can't quite break higher than it is right now, but it is at a very, very high price. Maybe some of the spill out into some other stocks. That is on Wednesday, so we can use equity options to trade, the grains. And the week after, we have adjusting butterflies. So after you use that spiffy new product from OX and you want to trade the position, come to Option Pit and we will show you how to adjust those lovely positions you get to put on. So
well said, sir. Now go forth and enjoy your lobsters.
All righty. Thanks, guys.
All right, have a good one. And Alex, I have a feeling that a lot of your intention these days is going to be focused on the Idea Hub. Is that going to be the big push for OX rolling forward? You're going to have a lot of, I know you guys do a lot of the webinars and seminars. Are you going to be doing webinars and seminars on how to use Idea Hub? And is that something that the listeners can look forward to?
Yep, we'll be actually putting the webinar schedule up in the next day or two. I've been out with Jimmy Ruzan. I said we were in Raleigh this last weekend, and next Saturday we'll be in Waltham, Massachusetts at the Westin Waltham. And we'll be doing a 4-hour Saturday, and everyone's welcome to come. It's a free event, and we'll be spending a little time on the Ideas Hub, but Jimmy does most of the day with the general options presentation, outstanding presentation. I joined him in Raleigh this weekend, and I kind of carried his bags and did 15 minutes on Ideas Hub. But yeah, we'll be rolling it out at prime time. as I say, going into the Boston market this weekend, but webinars will be starting shortly. All the work we do is free in the sense that you want to come to one of our off-site presentations, all you got to do is come to the site and register. Charge, same thing for the webinars. We're rolling those out now, and it's a real interesting time because of this product.
Yeah, I'm glad that, like I said, this is finally out and available to the public. I'm looking forward to having some time myself to play around with it and see exactly what this tool can do for you and what power you have put at my fingertips there, Mr. Alex.
It's cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Last week for Apple's earnings, it was picking up, $4 condors, $10 wide in Apple. We're all sitting here going, can we get out of the meeting so we can trade? So it's cool.
And it is cool that, this is not you and a handful of your staff behind the scenes picking these. This is essentially responding to automated signals, like you said, the algorithm. So it's got a no personal axe to grind whatsoever. It's just finding what it finds interesting and putting it up there for you to choose and peruse on your own time.
Yep, exactly.
And interesting stuff. So thank you for that, Alex. I'm glad we can have you on the show. And we'll have to bring you on again more often than once every 3 to 6 months, whatever the schedule is we have right now, so we can hear about some of these new features. I have a feeling that as Idea Hub starts rolling out more features, we'll be having you on more often, I think.
I look forward to it. This is the most fun hour of my day most days.
Well, I'm not sure if that's a good compliment for us or a sad commentary on your days these days, Alex.
It's a fun hour.
All right. Well, I'm glad you could make it. And of course, I'm glad that all of you out there in the listening audience could join us today. And unfortunately, that's going to do it for this episode of the Option Block. But before we go, I do want to mention that if you want to learn more about any of the topics we discussed on the show today, the unusual activity, the breaking news from the options markets, the trading analysis or education or any of that fun stuff, then by all means surf on over to theoptionsinsider.com. You can also find all the other fine programs that we do here on the Options Insider Radio Network, and look for an even greater overhaul of the optionsinsider.com coming in the very near future as we bring more of the requested functionality that you guys want to the site in the coming weeks. So stay tuned for that. But unfortunately, that is going to do it for this episode of the Option Block. But all of us here on the old All-Star panel want to thank all of you in the listening audience for downloading and streaming and subscribing to this program and making it such a success. And we'll see you on Friday right here on the Option Block.
Become a part of the Option Block. Just visit www.theoptionsinsider.com/forum to post a question for the hosts. You can also submit questions to twitter.com/optionblock or leave a voicemail at 312-544-9356. Make it interesting and your question just might make it on the air. The Options Block is property of the Options Insider Incorporated. All rights reserved. The preceding program was a presentation of the Options Insider Radio Network. For more programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com/radio or search for Options Insider Radio in iTunes.